And I also really understood that we couldn't look at our users as wallets. Right? We had to look at our users as someone who could build this trading platform with us. And I think, so many people in business actually are thinking, okay, here's the customer, how much can I get them to spend? And that has never really been my philosophy. My philosophy is you build a fantastic product, you build a great trading service, and then people will come. And I think Pierre particularly really understood that and liked it very much. And but I had no technology background. And I'm a big believer that great brands are made up of two things. One is they allow you to do something that you could not do before. So in my Procter & Gamble days, whiter whites, cleaner cleans, fresher breath, really meaningful consumer benefits. But the great brands also have an emotional connection. And I saw this at eBay when it was a 30-person company. It's very tempting when you join a new organization. It doesn't have to be a business. You join a new not-for-profit or join the board of a company. Your instinct is to look for what is going wrong and then be helpful in trying to fix it. I had quite the opposite idea. eBay, when I joined it, was growing at 70% compound monthly growth rate, meaning every month the company was 70% bigger than the month before. So my instinct, instead of finding out what was wrong, I said, what are we doing really well, and can we do more of that? And so I really focused on what was going really well, how do we do more of it, and how do we grow the organization, which is very unusual when CEOs come into organizations. And I will say the 30 people that worked at eBay, I think felt very, in some ways, validated that I wanted to see what was going right as opposed to what was going wrong. And then over time, put in a little what I would call adult supervision into eBay. I'll tell you a funny story. When I spent the day with Pierre later on that fall, and at the end of the day, we'd been getting along quite well. I said, Pierre, what are you interested in sort of the characteristics of a CEO? I thought he'd say strategic leadership, financial discipline, technology background. He looked at me with a little wink in his eye and he said, adult supervision. And that's all you need to know about Pierre. He didn't need adult supervision. He was 29 going on 40, but he understood in many ways what he did not know.
Possible to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation on the power of trust.
It is. And this is probably the thing that people are most surprised about at eBay. And if I go back to when we took the company public in the fall of 1998, and we did our normal IPO roadshow here in New York, and those investors who chose not to invest in eBay, they did so because they said, so let me make sure I understand this. I'm going to buy an item from someone I've never met on the other side of the country. I'm going to send them money and I'm going to get the item. I don't think so. But of course, we ended up building this into an $8 billion company where our users last year, eBay sellers last year, sold $65 billion worth of product, all virtually all over the internet, to 99% of it to people that they had never met. And if you think about it, it was all built on trust. And it makes you feel really good when you think about it was a multi-billion-dollar company that was built on trust. And one of the insights that Pierre had in the early days was the feedback profile. So on eBay, for those of you who don't know, when a buyer buys something from a seller, you can leave feedback for that seller. Likewise, the seller can leave feedback for the buyer. For example, great product, shipped on time, nice to do business with. But you can also leave negative feedback. And so what happened was, this was the, if you will, the currency of trust on eBay. You would look at someone's feedback rating and make a decision about whether you wanted to do business with them. And it was remarkable what happened. We, at eBay, one of the core values of the company was we believe people are basically good. And it doesn't mean that everyone is good, but most people want to do the right thing, and we built the company on that assumption. Now, we also, in the end, had well over 2,000 people working in our trust and safety department. We had significant technology that would find fraud and find people who were trying to commit fraud, but it was always a tiny, tiny fraction of sellers. And so we went forward with the notion that people are basically good, and let's assume that, and sort of not, instead of put a barrier at the front, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. If they prove themselves to be untrustworthy, we'll deal with them later. But it was a fundamental approach that I think made all the difference at eBay.
Must you set aside your authentic self as you climb the corporate ladder, in your opinion?
So I don't think so. And I think this is a challenge for everyone in business. When you first get your first job, do you have to become someone that you are not? And I decided early on that I actually really couldn't become someone that I wasn't. And most successful business people I know, there is a marriage between their personal self and their business self. You can't be one thing at work and be something else at home. So, you know, a little story. When I started at Procter & Gamble, which was my first job out of Harvard Business School, I arrived there and I thought, you know, I'd been called Meg all my life. And I said, gee, Meg doesn't sound very serious. You know, there were hardly any women in our entering class at Harvard Business School. So I said, wouldn't it be better if I called myself Margaret? Now, not exactly an extreme makeover, but it lasted for about 3 days because I wasn't Margaret, I was Meg. And so what I tell young people starting out, find something that you love. Find people that you want to work with. Find a company whose ethics and values you subscribe to. And what I always say to people, if you are not entirely comfortable with the people that you're working with and how they are behaving, run, do not walk for the exits. And it's interesting, when you're running a global company like eBay was, we had operations in 35 countries. Often, what is right and wrong in some countries is perceived quite differently, right? And so I would have young executives all over the world who'd say, well, how can we be sure that we're operating under eBay's code of ethics and the way you would like us to? And I said, you know, I bet in every country of the world this will work. Pretend you are sitting in a conference room making the decision that you are grappling with. And envision your mother or your father or your children or someone you care about dearly sitting up in the corner of the room looking down at you. Would they be proud? And if they're not proud, you probably shouldn't be doing it. The technology, and particularly the internet, has disrupted almost every business. Think about how you get your information today. Think about how you communicate. Look what it is in the process of doing to our traditional media. You know, the entire business model of many of the print media companies and the television companies are in jeopardy because the internet has changed everything. Think about social networking. In many ways, eBay was the first social networking site because, remember, I told you we had collectors who were on the site, and so those collectors made connections with people who liked the same thing that they do. But look at Facebook today. Look at Twitter. Look at Scribd. You know, it's quite remarkable. What's happening is it's changing the whole notion of social interactions. In many ways, I think for the better. I have a few concerns, as you might imagine, but it's remarkable what technology can do. In my view, this will ultimately, almost every industry will be disrupted by this fundamental new wave of technology. And my view is that if you are in a business that is about to be disrupted, you better do it to yourself before someone else does it to you, because you can't stop this.